Hello, this is Dr. George Pereira. Welcome to IHS OUM and welcome to the course Listening and Speaking in ESL. Today we are going to discuss about topic 3, listening in different contexts. So listening in different contexts. What are the types of listening according to language 1 speech education studies, and what are the types of listening according to communication studies? So what are the types of listening? So the types of listening include critical, which should have a keep an open mind and so forth. Then interactional, which includes prepare supportive feedback and so forth. And transactional, which includes developing questions, paraphrase, summarize, and so forth. And recreational. So even for the exam, they may ask, discuss two elements of transactional type of listening. So with that in mind, let us proceed. Types of listening. Listening is viewed not only as a linguistic skill, but also as a cognitive and social skill. Linguistic, language, cognitive, that goes through your brain, and social, through interaction. So these are the areas. Transactional listening skills include consider implications, developing questions, summarize, test ideas for consistency with own experience, paraphrase, compare and contrast information, and order. It's a transaction that goes through. Certain things are taken for our discussion. According to Calvin, paraphrase helps students convey the speaker's message in their own words. Then compare and contrast information helps students describe similarities and differences. Order helps students put events in an explicit sequence. Put in order. Consider implications helps students formulate applications. Develop questions helps students formulate questions they need to answer. Summarize helps students state the main points. And paraphrase, uh, the speaker's content is put in by the student into their own words. So test ideas for consistency with our experience, help students evaluate the ideas they learn. Then interactional listening, the flip side of the coin or the other end of the continuum. Demarcation is interactional communication, communication that is primarily for maintaining and establishing relationships. So there are some skills in interactional listening. They prepare for supportive feedback, then they know the ideas from speaker, recognize levels of meaning. Critical listening, that is another aspect. The word critical usually refers to something critical, crucial, or important. So, do you think that critical listening, crucial, important points are listened to, suggests listening to crucial or important information? Do you think that critical listening suggests listening to crucial or important information? If you think so, describe how serious critical listening can be and compare your answer to what is discussed below. Another type of listening is critical listening. As the term suggests, the purpose of critical listening is to evaluate the reasoning and evidence that you hear. The reasoning and evidence. Here are some guidelines to improve your critical listening skills. Keep an open mind. You're with an already you're not jumping into conclusions and what do you call judgments, but you keep open-minded to the content. Avoid distorting messages. Avoid uncritical listening. Then another aspect of listening is recreational listening. Among the recreational listening skills that you could develop in your students are recreational listening aspects. Give full attention to the event. Enjoy the presentation of new ideas. respond to the positive aspects of the event. Then types of listening, communications in communication studies. So for communication, you need listening. So any discourse in the field of communication is incomplete unless if there is a section assigned to listening. So we now turn to two sources from the field of communication. What are the purposes of listening? So from a communication perspective, there is a purpose of listening. Types of purpose of listening. Types of purpose of listening. To understand and retain information, to evaluate the quality of messages, to build and maintain relationships, to help others. So these are the purposes of listening. Why are you listening? To understand the information and to retain the information, to evaluate the quality of that message, to build and maintain a relationship, to help others. So, according to board, there are three types of listening: listening for pleasure, listening for information, and listening to support others. So, these are types of listening or the purposes: listening for pleasure, support, and listening for information. When you are listening for information, you have to be mindful, controlling obstacles, asking questions, using aids to recall, and organizing information. So, based on the purpose, the skills can change that we discussed earlier. Listening for information means you have to be being mindful, controlling obstacles, asking questions, using aids to recall, and organizing information. These are very critical. So, what are the ways of listening for information? So, these are the areas. Then, using aids to recall, the recalling the information. So, that is part of listening skills, the types of listening. First, you could repeat important ideas to yourself immediately after hearing them because we tend to notice and recall stimuli that are repeated. It would save you the embarrassment of having to ask the beautiful girl you just met to repeat her name. Just a silly example. Second, you could use mnemonic devices, a technique many of our familiar with and often use to recall. Then, organizing information. This is another skill, especially in studying. You could reduce the complexity of the listening input by grouping what you hear into categories or chunks that are meaningful to you. Organizing will allow you to retain the essence of what you have listened to. However, this skill requires you to be actively involved in the communication, physically, mentally, and emotionally. For example, if you are listening to a lecture, all these skills are important. The skills using aids to recall and organizing information. Then we are going to another area, listening contexts. So there are different contexts. The context could include the setting, the participants, and the actions. It might be said that language is needed only when we must make up for the lack of information in the context. So, we have already established the importance of context. Then let us look at two specific contexts in this section. The ability to, then the listening in conversation, that is the context, listening. The context is the conversation. The ability to identify conversation patterns in the context. Conversation. The ability to identify conversational styles. The ability to understand the speaker's intention. So the context is the conversation. We have to know the patterns, the styles, and the speaker's intentions. So this diagram shows that conversation patterns, speaker's intention, and conversational styles. So, what are the conversational patterns? Those are the exchanges of participation between two or more people. The exchange. In the following exchange, we can identify a pattern, that is greeting, then return, greeting. Good morning, good morning. Then the conversational styles, openings, turn taking. When one speaks, the other one listens. When the other one listens, the other one speaks. You open the conversation, then you take turns and do the conversation, then the closings, then the back channel signals, and the repair systems. So let us discuss in detail some of these things. Openings. All societies have developed routines for beginning conversations. Hi, how are you? Good morning. That's maybe a beginning. Turn taking. All societies have subtle systems for deciding speak in turns, who speaks and who listens. Closings. All societies have developed routines for closing conversations. Back channel. All societies have developed verbal and non-verbal systems for the listener to give feedback to the speaker. Verbal and non-verbal systems to give the feedback. Repair systems. Or the social groups have ways of repairing a conversation if understanding breaks down. Then the other point is the ability to understand the speaker's intention. We listen to many statements that have hidden meanings. So, the intentions of the speaker. These statements are also called indirect statements, but of course, these are also influenced by culture and so forth. There are numerous reasons for indirectness, such as those given in table below. So, indirectness and direct statements. So these are examples. To be tactful, that is the reasoning of the speaker. Indirect statement. I think you might want to check your slip at the back. Direct statement. Your slip is showing at the back. Better adjust it. Polite. If it is not too much trouble, we would appreciate a clean copy. Direct statement. Send us a clean copy. Extra message of support. I know it is difficult for you to finish this by Friday, but I hope you will try. Direct. I want you to finish this by Friday. Minimize conflict. If I wish you would have rung me to tell me you would be late. You would rung me to tell me you would be late. I'm annoyed at you for not ringing me. So, in addition to what we have looked at so far, listeners can also control or guide conversations by what they say and what they do as they listen. These responses have been categorized into back channeling, reframing, and topic shifting. So, guiding a conversation, reframing, topic shifting, back channeling. Back channeling in face to face conversation, the listener is expected to provide appropriate back channeling signals to the speaker to indicate that the person is actively listening. So, the examples would be, oh, right, yes, I see. Hmm. Nonverbal signals, hand nods, furrowed eyebrow, arched eyebrows, wide eyes, and so forth. So, direct and indirect. So, this is back channeling. Effective listeners usually provide back channeling signals based on a moment to moment understanding of the topic. Reframing. Reframing means that the listener repeats what the speaker says using different words or expressions. It's like paraphrasing. This way, the listener can actively alter the content of the conversation. So, the reframing could be cooperative. The meaning of the intended by the speaker is preserved. Challenging, the speaker's meaning is rejected. conflict in the speaker's meaning is changed, topic shifting, then power relations, all these are included under that. Methods of controlling and guiding the conversation. Then powerless participation is characterized by behaviors that show deference to the speaker, allowing him or her to continue talking without interruption or reformulation or ultra polite back channeling. So the listener may use hesitations, hedges, empty expressions. So these features, it seems, are common in men-women interactions according to Lakoff 1974 and courtroom interrogations, powerless participation in the courtroom. So listening in cross-cultural settings is another important area. Adjusting to cross-cultural encounters. So when you are in the cross-cultural setting, you have to select the vocabulary, grammar simplification, discourse pattern selection, then control of communication style, rituals and expectations, repair and clarification. Those are important in cross-cultural settings. So discuss two factors from here that is involved in cross-cultural settings. What are the adjustments they need? For example, discuss vocabulary selection and control of communication style. So vocabulary selection, colloquial language, figures of speech, metaphors, and literary examples often confuse non-native speakers. For example, the New York slang we may not understand, but whatever we are using as metaphors and all that, New Yorkers may not understand. So vocabulary selection is important. They should be omitted or restated in more universal terms, the terms that everybody understands, not just figures of speech and metaphors and literary examples. The plan was really screwed up, could be restated. The plan failed completely. Then grammar simplification. Complex grammar can be replaced with short speaking terms. Discourse pattern selection. Universal conversation patterns such as question answer may be used more frequently than topic comment patterns. Instead of the topic, the question answer. So these are the areas that you can read also in the textbook. Control of communication style, rituals and expectations, repair and clarification. So this is for you to think about. State the various types of listening and elaborate on each of the type. And of course, you also can take one type and discuss. Pretend that you are in a conversation. There's the second one. Pretend that you are in a conversation with a long lost friend whom you have not met for the past 12, 20 years. When you listen to him speak to you at that moment, what do you think would be the content of the message? And when you listen, how you would interpret them? So write down your points and this test 1 and 2 for you. So this is Dr. George Pereira once again, and thank you for listening. So try to summarize the content in this topic, and certain parts will be used for the written exam. So thank you very much.